All right. Hey, listen, welcome to another episode of Conversations with Geoff. And I want to tell you, like I always tell you, when I get excited when I have some guests that are just going to blow your mind. You want to make sure you clear your calendar for the next couple of days. Well, maybe not a couple of days, but at least an hour, so you can really learn some things and really get some things that you don't know you need to know right now, right? So welcome to Conversations with Geoff. I am the host, and my name is Geoff Tyson, and I'm known as the Comeback King. And our mission, oh man, for those of you that don't know, is really to bring powerful guests like who we have on today from areas from business to relationships to community and health and wealth. And they bring their power. They share their story. They share their journey. They share that growth through the comeback, baby. Right? All those things that they do when they get knocked down, when they get knocked down that 999 time and you get back up, right? And then you can take that information. And here's what's going on. Take that information, put it in your life, and make a difference. Change that direction, change that trajectory of where you're headed. And most importantly, what I believe, then you add the power of the comeback, that stinking thinking, right? That conversation you're having with yourself about yourself. You guys know me, right? Hey, it's about that. When you put that piece in play and you start to be aware of it, and you pay attention to it, you start to make pivoting changes, and you practice a new way of talking to yourself, a new way of living. Oh man, and you're going to hear some of that, a lot of that probably today, right? Just talking to the guests before the show. So anyway, let me just get to her so we can get this thing going, right? Let me find out where I can share a little bit of information. Our guest and my friend, Jessica Rhodes, is a founder of Interview Connections. And if those of you speakers, I'm calling all wannabe speakers. If you're really wanting to do some things on stage and get on stage, and call your friends right now, right? Right. So she's created the founder of the first leading podcast booking agency. She'll talk a whole lot about that. And they started it back in 2013. And, today, fast forward, kind of highlight some things. She's going to talk about her journey. But today, they've done over 30,000 podcast interviews and have over 800 clients. And listen, I've been part of her sessions as well. That's why I like it, because you guys know I like to bring people in here that I connect with. The man and this woman is truly all of what I'm talking to you about and more. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just stop talking and bring our guest, my new friend, Jessica Rhodes, to the stage. Here we go. Let me find her.
Hi, Geoff.
Hey, Jessica. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule, to come out here and share and drop some nuggets and people, because speaking, you hear all about podcasting and you hear all about speaking and people don't know where to get started, or they tried, they failed. I mean, to have you here is really going to help a lot of people. So we appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I know you've attended some of our master classes, so it's always fun for me to be able to connect more with those that attend our workshops, because we've got thousands of people that register for those, and we try to connect with everyone in email, but then to be able to do a face-to-face, put into action what I'm teaching is so fun. So I just want to encourage anyone who's watching live or watching the replay to give us a comment so we can say hello and come back and say hi in the comments.
Absolutely. And do that all throughout the session here today, and make sure she's going to give you information at the end of this thing that you reach out to her, because there's some great stuff coming down the pipeline. So, okay, we see you today, this beautiful smile, you're doing all these fantastic things. And we always like to kind of take a walk back in history and through time and kind of where did it all begin and why, so tell us where it all began, and we can get to the why and some of the other stuff.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to go back in time, because as I just posted on social media and was talking to you before the show started, this is our 11th year in business. September 2013 is, I think I lost Geoff, but we're going to just keep the show going. Oh, you're still here. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just fancy. So September 2013 is when I started Interview Connections, and 6 months before that, I became a mom. For the first time, I had a child. He's now 11 years old, and I wanted to be home with him. So taking it back even further, when I was pregnant with Nathan, I knew that I wanted to be home, not necessarily full-time stay-at-home mom, but I knew I didn't want to be leaving the house to go to work every day. And so I talked to my parents about that. I said, it was just when I was pregnant, like a switch just flipped in my mind. I'm like, and so they fully supported that. They were actually pretty surprised. They were like, they did not think that I would be the first of their children to have a kid. Like, it was a little bit of a, wait a second, this is not what we expected.
Yeah.
Jessica's having a baby and she wants to be home. What's going on? Because I've always been very like career oriented, like very driven. I was working for a nonprofit for 6 years, leading a door-to-door canvas. I was directing my office. But I just, had the baby fever and got pregnant and was like, we're gonna be home. And so
nice.
My dad is a business coach. He started his own business in 2001, actually, is when he got started. And he said, be a virtual assistant. Like, you can be a virtual assistant, you could start your own business. And so while I was still pregnant, working my full-time job, I started doing virtual assistant work on the side. So nights and weekends, I would work in my dad's business and do some administrative work for him, did some client support, kind of flex my sales skills and do some calls for him. I was mailing out books. Like, I really was paying my dues early on. So he's a self-published, he's self-published many, many books. And I was his fulfillment house. Like, so I was like going to the post office with my little baby.
Bring your baby with you.
And now I had so many priority mail envelopes in my house. And so that was one of the things I did as his VA, was I would ship out his books. I became I was on a first name basis with the postal worker. And I was like, hey again.
Hey, how you doing? Here she comes, carrying the baby in the post.
So luckily I was in a small town. It was like a very tiny little post office. It was easy, but that's how I got started. And so after a few months, I started booking my dad on podcasts. He was like, he had another VA that was doing it for him, but he's like, I think you'll be really good at this. And just kind of figured it out, Googled, found some business podcasts, and my dad really helped me kind of get things going. So I'll take a pause because I could easily do an hour-long monologue of my life story. But
I was just going to raise the flag because you said a couple of really good things in here. You know? And one of them is that you didn't hesitate, from what I could see. Right? I mean, you had some experiences and some other things, and to step into the VA platform in that VA world is not the most glamorous role, first of all, for those of you out there that you think you can't do something. And then number two, you build relationships, right? And then you say, okay, you figured something out, and then you just created your own thing, right? I mean,
yeah. And let me tell you about the not glamorous side of things. So there's all these moments that I'll never forget. And so before I had my baby and I became, stay at home, work at home mom, I was working for a nonprofit organization. I was the director of that canvassing office. So I really did work my way up to a leadership position. And then when I became a virtual assistant, one of the tasks that I was doing for my dad was I was checking links on his website. So I would spend, now I'm sure there's like AI can do that. But at the time, I was going, and he had a newsletter marketing business. So his membership site had hundreds of links. And so every month or so, I would go in and I would just click them.
Wow.
They broken. I was like, this is humbling. I have a college degree. I was a director, and now I'm checking links.
Oh man, that's why I stopped you, because I look, VA, I know it, but look, man, I mean, but and people don't often take that time to really think about it. I believe, and this is just kind of getting to know you, come from whatever it takes kind of mentality. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And that's actually, so I'm writing this email series right now with 11 lessons learned from 11 years in business. And that is literally one of the lessons, is do whatever it takes. So many people kind of think they're above certain things, especially entrepreneurs, because you're like, I am the founder and CEO, like I'm a business owner. And I will tell you, there is not a single task in my business that needs to get done that I'm not willing to do. I will pick up the phone, I will call leads, I will do the follow-ups, I'll clean the pipeline, I'll do whatever. And so when I had the opportunity to be a virtual assistant for my dad, while I was doing the grunt work, I was doing tasks that were probably below my level of education and work experience.
Yes.
It really gave me an opportunity to learn so much because while I was working in his business and doing the virtual assistant work, I was also learning. I was able to be a fly on the wall of his mastermind calls. And
Wow.
so I was able to watch him coach and listen to recordings of mastermind calls and, read like his books and go through his courses. I mean, I suppose I could have read his books before I became his virtual assistant, but
well, there's other things to do, right? I get it.
I know who's looking at their dad's business stuff before they become a VA. So I was going through his courses and learning so much. I'm like, well, my dad's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah. And see, all that stuff, came basically as a bonus because you didn't have to pay for it. Some people have to pay to go to masterminds. Not yet.
Not yet. That came.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Let's not pre-ride forever. But.
I like your dad, right? If that's who it was, whoever put that in place, you got to learn something. You got to make sacrifices. So you're doing all this stuff and you're learning and you're humble. Man. And so your son, right, is about as old as the business.
Oh, yeah. His birthdays are... They keep us like when he turned 11 this past March, we're like, oh my gosh, like I look at, and it's crazy to look at pictures of him because he's this physical, like you can see as he gets bigger, that's how big the business is. And my business partner, Margy, who's our CEO, she's pregnant and she's going to have a baby at the end of November. And so we were talking about baby stuff and one of her questions had me open up his baby book and I'm seeing his little baby pictures and I'm like, oh my God, like I was starting Interview Connections when he was this little infant and now he's 11 and a half years old. Like, it's crazy.
Now, is he in and around the business? Is he sniffing yet, or is he still, kind of 11-year-old? I mean,
he's 11, right? So he's kind of in his own world. My daughter, I have a 9-year-old daughter, and so she's much more a moth to the flame. She's a moth to my flame. She's my son will come in, hi, but he's very like we talk. My husband and I both talk a lot about like our work. We try to just like have regular adult conversations because kids learn just through conversation and through observation. We're not like, here, we're going to like teach you about business and we're going to teach you about this, but we just openly talk, I openly talk at dinner. Like, oh, this is a sales call I had today. And this is where we're at revenue wise. This is where we're at profit wise. And so they're very like, they pick up on that stuff without talking at them. They just pick it up through conversation. And I'll just tell you a little funny anecdote. So my daughter, like most 9-year-old girls, desperately wants to go to the Eras tour, as do I. And the tickets are like $2,000, and that's just like I'm not gonna drop over $5,000 on a trip to the Eras tour. I want to go, but it's just
not yet, right?
not yet. That's financially not where I'm at right now, but she desperately wants to go. And so she's looking at StubHub. She's looking at all the ticket apps, just scrolling through. What are the prices? And I'm like, what do you see? And she goes, you need to close more sales.
I don't know much, but I know that. I've heard you say that. I know where the cash comes from, Mom, right? So go out and do it.
Close more sales. I'm like,
well, tell her, pat her on the back for me and tell her, great job, keep listening, right? Because and I love what you're talking about. We'll get to where we're here, but I just want to pause for a second and talk about communication with kids, right? And talking around them and with them, and because children, they're going to be what they see from you, no matter what you tell them, right? So they absorb everything, Jessica, and they see your eyes light up when just having that ability to talk with them, and they sit and participate. Because I believe this communication for children, our parents, we as parents and grandparents have a responsibility to make sure that they know how to communicate like you and I are doing to anybody.
Yeah.
Because that's a lost art. I mean, if they don't have this and they're not hunched over like this and they have to look up and talk to you, they're frozen.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I just.
Yeah.
I I just go ahead. I've got three grandchildren, so and it's all about that. And I just took the 14-year-old to school this morning, and she's in this theater and some of these other things, and her teacher said, you are a freshman and you have the opportunity to be the best freshman ever, and they're doing this speaking type stuff, Jessica, and it's like, and her eyes light up. So.
Yeah, that's why I love both my kids are competitive athletes, and my husband is an athlete. I came from doing theater and performing arts, so I kind of had a different background than them. But it's really, I love it. I love being the parent of competitive athletes because the amount of discipline that they learn, and the communication. My son just joined a premier soccer club and he's the goalkeeper. So talking about you're the new kid on the team and you're the goalkeeper, and just the confidence, breaking through the nerves, and then also the confidence that it develops. It's absolutely huge. And it's the skills that will serve them in whatever professional career that they go into. I think my daughter's definitely got a knack for sales. I wouldn't be surprised if she follows in my footsteps. I totally agree. I think it's so important to just include your kids in these conversations, to lead by example. It's huge.
Yeah. Well, thanks for playing with me in this space a little bit. I know we didn't come to talk about children, but I think it's important, and I can see your face light up when you talk about your kids. So now you're back and you're in this VA stuff and working with that, and I mean, when did you say, okay, I'm ready? How did that happen?
Well, so so I want to bring it back too. I'll let you know when I started paying, because I think that's
okay, let's go there.
Because my dad, my parents they're the best parents in the world, and they my dad they give so much, and they also mentor and teach so much and so well. And so when my dad took me on as a virtual assistant, it was around November 2012. So it was, just a few months before the baby came, where I started working on the side. And he's like, I'm going to take you on. I'm only going to keep you if you do a good job. And if you're not, I won't fire you at Christmas, but I will let you go if you're not doing a good job. So he let me know, you have to, because it's not he was definitely giving me an opportunity. There was a value exchange, but he's like, I'm not going to, you actually have to do a great job. And so I worked super, super hard, went above and beyond, did as much as I could. And I loved working with my dad. It was the best. It brought us closer. It really created a bond that we didn't have before, this common interest in business. And, it was awesome. And then so I launched Interview Connections in September of 2013. So this is our 11-year business birthday. And, so throughout that summer and that fall, my dad was letting me kind of be a fly on the wall of the mastermind calls that he was hosting with his clients. But he said, if you want to participate and be a part of these masterminds, you have to pay, you have to be a client. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's fair, because it is his business. You know what I mean? If a family member comes to your business is I expect everything for free, that wouldn't feel great. And of course, there's no holding back. We'll have conversations at any time. But in terms of, being a part of the community, because when you're in a mastermind community, everyone, you're getting value from every person there. So, so January 2014 became a client of the mastermind group, started paying just like everyone else. And so 2014 was the first full year of Interview Connections. And a big thing that I did that felt really big at the time was I set a goal to have a 6-figure business.
I saw it.
And that was I remember that moment. Those mastermind calls were on a conference call line because it was 2013. So it wasn't a Zoom call.
No Zoom, right?
It was instant teleseminar was how we all dialed in.
Man, so long ago, but it's just yesterday, right? So
and I wanted to have a 6-figure business, and I felt like I was nervous saying that out loud. It really felt astronomical because at the time for me, anyone that made 6 figures was so rich.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that was it. Like that was
Yeah.
it. If you make six figures, you're rich.
You're rich. Yes.
And I still think that is true. For the record, if you're making six figures, you are absolutely doing very, very well.
That's right.
And at the time that felt for me, I'm 25 years old at this time. I'm a new mom. I just left my nonprofit job where my salary was like $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so I set this goal to have a six-figure business. And I was nervous to say it. And everyone on the call was like, yeah, like they were so supportive. I mean, it was really a community that was like, they
That's
were
awesome.
all taking me under their wing.
Yeah.
Yes. And so
awesome.
my dad said, you can absolutely meet that goal and I will help you do it.
Wow.
Implement my coaching. Implement what I tell you to do. And so I said, yes, Dad.
Done.
Yes, Dad. I did. So I'll pause. But then there's a whole series of things I took action on that were way outside my comfort zone. But I'll chime in.
No, please. I mean, I was just going to say, you take this. He says, I'll coach you. You say yes. It's easy to say yes and then do it.
Yep.
And not do it. I mean, you can have that choice on and on through the process.
Yeah.
You know, but I want to just speak to the mastermind community too. Those are just gifts that, you know, look at where you are today. You're 25 years old and that circle of influence. I mean, it's all showing up now. Right. So people that worry about investing and spending money on themselves and they struggle, when masterminds come along, you have opportunities. Please find a way to join them. So, I mean,
and so that community was great. And I've seen so often, you know, business owners investing in mastermind and coaching. And what I witnessed too, sometimes that I learned from was when my dad would coach somebody and they're like, yeah, but that didn't work for me. I tried that. And so I learned how to be coached because you don't hire a coach to just say to them, yeah, but I already tried that and it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
Like it was a different way of thinking that I learned from observing the mastermind calls and observing the people that took the coaching, implemented and got results, and those that kind of kicked the tire around and kind of like pushed back. And don't get me wrong, there were times in my journey where my dad would coach me on something and I'm like, no, I don't agree. And he goes, okay, good. Sometimes he would say, sometimes I push back to see how convicted you are in what you want to do. Because because if I push back and you're like, ooh, you're wobbly, okay, well, then let's rethink the plan. But if I push back and you're certain that that's what you're going to do, let's go, you know?
Like, man. Yeah. I mean, because that is automatically, they're going to give you that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
You know?
And so some of the things that I did that first year, so I'm booking interviews, right? I've got interview connections. I'm booking interviews. I'm doing, you know, all the pitching and booking myself. And so I'm making all these connections with podcast hosts. So my dad, you know, he told me like, you've got to be giving value, look at who these potential referral partners are. So one of the first things I did was John Lee Dumas, who's a really successful business podcaster. He's got the, you know, first ever daily business podcast. And so I connected with him pretty early on, booked my dad and some other clients on his show. And so I reached out to him and was like, and asked if we could do, you know, have a referral partnership because he had a target audience. And he's so generous. He was like, he was like, I'm not going to take an affiliate commission from you, but I'll have you as a resource in my community. And so he linked to interviewconnections.com in his Podcaster's Paradise. And so I got a lot of clients. Like he mentioned me. It was just like, I gave value to him. I was doing some social media stuff. So like made some graphics for him. I gave first without expecting or asking for anything in return. But
love that. Yeah.
Had that relationship and that rapport, I got up the courage, which was nerve-wracking because he was like really killing it, and asked like, would you refer your clients to Interview Connections? And so he said yes. And so that was really like one of my first clients, Nathaniel Boyle, who actually just commented on my Facebook post. So it's like, I love staying connected with people that really gave me a chance when I was nobody at the time. And so, he was like, yeah, John Lee Dumas mentioned you. And like, that's how I found you. And that's really what got things off the ground. And then I really had to get outside my comfort zone, metaphorically speaking, and literally, because again, I am a new mom. I am working from home, and I started going to conferences. First, I tagged along with my dad. I went to GKIC, Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle. Like I went to the Info Summit, which is if you've been in marketing a long time, you know the GKIC Dan Kennedy world. So I would tag along with my dad and go to some conferences. And then the first big event that I went to all by myself, not with my dad, I went to, it was called the New Media Summit, which I don't think that conference is around anymore. Or maybe it was acquired and it turned into something else, but it was called the New Media Summit. And this was like, now there's podcast movement, there's actual podcast conferences. At the time, there was no podcast conference. It was the New Media Summit.
Wow.
New Media Expo. Maybe it was Expo. New Media something.
Okay.
And I went and I had some clients that I said was, my one of my first clients, Jason Silverman, had a friend that was going to be there, and told his friend, look out for Jessica, like introduce her to some people. And so I had some people there that were like, let me connect you. And at that conference my dad would tell me, when you're at the conference, ask a question in every session that you're in, because even if you're not a speaker, when you ask a question, you are now speaking to the entire room.
Yes.
So I went to, her name is Jamie Masters. At the time, her name is Jamie Tardy. She is a podcaster. She has Eventual Millionaire podcast. She's amazing. And so she's been interviewing millionaires on her podcast forever. And so she was speaking, and I had booked some people on her show. So she knew me, and I went up to the microphone and I asked a question, and I said, I'm Jessica. I'm the founder of Interview Connections, and we book podcast interviews. And I asked a question. I don't even know what I asked, but I'm taking this opportunity. And she said, everyone, Jessica's great. If you need podcast interviews booked, go talk to her. After that session, it was as if I was speaking. It was as if that was my session. I had so many people come up to me. And of course, what my dad told me to do, he says, have a little, I had a brochure, like I printed out, like I had a one sheet about my service. I had a little manila folder with me.
Oh man.
So my friend Rosemary Nickel was there, and she was like taking pictures of me. She's like, I'm so proud of you. And so that's when your dad like has their friends watch out for you. It's the best.
Oh man.
I got so many clients, and then it was at that conference. This conference was a game changer for me. That so my client, his friend who was kind of looking out for me, introduced me to Michael Stelzner, who is the founder and CEO of socialmediaexaminer.com, which is the world's largest social media blog.
Oh, my.
And the funny thing is, I knew who he was. I knew Social Media Examiner, but I wasn't able to put a face to the name. So I'm introduced to Michael, and I have no idea who he is. I'm just like, hi, like, and I realized who he is, and I'm like, I would have been, not that I didn't behave correctly, but I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize who I was talking to.
Well, you got a chance to see who you really were, so it worked out.
It turned out, and I think that's the big lesson, is just be yourself. Don't
be yourself.
Change if you're talking to a celebrity or a big name. Just be yourself.
Yeah.
And it was at that conference that I sat down, like, you're taking me back. I'm sitting at this table with him, and he's like, what do you do? Like, tell me about your business. Tell me about your service. And he goes, listen, I'm starting a new podcast called Parenting Adventures. And I need help finding guests. And so he hired Interview Connections. And for the run of that show, I booked the guests for his podcast. And had a great experience. He sunset that show. It didn't continue going, but for the time that he ran it, he had me book his podcast guest. I got some great people on his show, and we still have a great relationship to this day. Stay in touch on social media. He'll always encourage people to work with Interview Connections. And that was from my very first year in business, getting outside my comfort zone, going into credit card debt to go to that conference because I didn't have much cash. I was working a nonprofit job at $30K a year. Like, I didn't have money, but I bet on myself. I used a credit card. I was financially very irresponsible in a lot of ways, but I had faith that it would all work out. And so, that conference was an absolute launch pad for interview that helped me really deepen relationships that I had formed online, and made a lot of great connections and got a lot of clients.
Well, it sounded like to me too, all that success happened to you, but then you, right? Young, showing up, getting really uncomfortable, and still maintaining yourself. And those are real life situations that people, you know, they need to know that they can get through them like you did.
Yeah.
Right? And the journey does not go around that. Your journey has to be what you're talking about. So when people are listening, they need to hear that, you know, you were meeting people that were like high profile. I mean, you talking about some big dollar guys and people, women, men, right in that circle, and you just showed up.
Yeah.
Oh, bravo.
Just showing up and really hustling one-to-one, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of business owners are trying to find the biggest audiences. How can they find the most people? How can they get in front of the most people? And I built interview connections one relationship at a time,
Yeah.
one person at a time, formed the relationship online, took it offline, deepened the relationship, provided value. Like, it was a one solid building block after another. Like
Yeah.
John Lee Dumas, Jamie Masters, Michael Stelzner, like all these people I built really strong relationships with, provided value, had integrity, did a really good job. And it was and that reputation is what has helped us continue to stand apart,
Yeah.
because for the first several years of Interview Connections, I was the only game in town. Oh, I
Yeah.
should leave my microphone. Like, I was the only game in town. There was no other podcast booking agency. So that really helped us. But
Yep.
if you're the only game in town and you do a bad job, your success is only going to last so long.
Yeah. I mean, the community gets smaller as your name gets out there, right? As success starts to happen, right? And people remember different things. So you're doing this stuff, and your business is growing. I want to kind of fast forward it a little bit, because you let's get to the and thank you for sharing all that.
If we go with that. We're 6 months into the business right now.
I know. I got to get a couple of years forward.
We'll leap forward a bit.
Well, I'd love to hear more about it. But I want people. So you're doing this. Let's go to another phase. So your partnership. You're doing this thing. You got how did the partnership come in, and then how, partnerships are great, but they're not always easy, as we're talking about. So talk about that a little bit when you got to that point.
Yeah. So this is perfect, because this really is like, there's some kind of like milestone moments in the business.
Yeah.
Fast forwarding now to 2017. So I am hiring employees for the first time. I had grown a team of 1099 contractors. So as the business is growing, I'm just taking on VAs, that's easy. They just invoice me through PayPal. It's easy. But then I realized that I needed to have a lot more control over how it was being done, what was being done, hours being worked. Like, there was a lot more control I needed. So to stay compliant with labor laws, which I am a rule follower, went to have employees. And so one of the contractors that I'd hired was Margy Feldhuhn, who I met. We both worked at Clean Water Action. We both worked at the nonprofit together. So when she reached out and applied for the contractor position, it was perfect to have her as the first employee, because she lived in Rhode Island. We were in the same state. And so employing in many different states is a little bit more complicated. So she became the first employee. I thought that I would hire her to just manage the contractors. I thought that I just needed an employee to help me manage everything. But maybe a month after she was hired, I said, we need all employees. Like, everyone needs to be an employee. And I remember I called her up. I was at one of my dad's business seminars. And I just watched Carmen Torres do a talk on HR and employee versus contractors. And I call her up in the hallway and I'm like, Margy, everyone needs to be an employee. And we met up at a coffee shop and I'm like, we need to change everything over this week. And she's like, okay.
Wow.
Like, the picture I posted where she's just looking at me like that's probably how she looked at me in that moment. It did not take a week to change over, but it took about a year, all of 2017, to make that changeover. And that was a very difficult year. We won't go down that rabbit hole, but it was very challenging. And I could not have done it without Margy. I mean, there were tears shed. There were, it was crazy. Like, it's just wild. And she was such, like, she was my partner that year, like fully behaved in that way. And I think she's such a good example of like it's like you dress and behave for the job that you want, the
Yeah.
role that you want. She didn't wait for me to offer her something to then act like a partner. Like I wanted her to be a 50% co-owner because she was already acting like a 50% co-owner.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
already had so much ownership over the business. So towards the end of 2017, I had achieved this vision. I had grown a 6-figure business. I had employees. I had an office. Like I had all this stuff and I was burnt out. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like I don't want to really do this anymore. Like what I didn't want to do it alone. And so
Yeah.
Margy and
Yeah.
I we started this podcast together, like not business related. It was called Women's Splaining. And we talked about like mental health and just kind of like a fun podcast, like passion project. And so we had started just dreaming together about like things that we could do. And we went out to lunch one day and I said, we're walking back into the office after lunch. And I was like, so like, would you want to be a business owner? And without a beat, she says, yes.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, cool. So like,
why I wait so long, right?
I'm like, okay, so got it. I'm thinking she's gonna leave and start her own business, or I'm about to give up some equity because I can't afford to pay her what she is worth and what she, the value that she brings. And so we then, went into conversation. I started researching a lot about giving equity to employees. Of course, there's a lot out there about like, 5% equity, 10% equity.
Yeah.
I talked to my husband a little about it. We're like maybe 20% because she wasn't buying into the business. Like the business wasn't valuable enough to like give me money in exchange.
Right.
So
that's right.
I'm like kind of started a negotiation. And this was so hard because at the time we are telling each other everything. Like we would talk to each other about everything. So, and now we're in this position where we're negotiating with each other. I can't talk to her.
Man.
So I start with what didn't feel intuitively the correct way, but kind of like my husband's like, don't just give her 50% equity. Like that's kind of what? We start with, I think like 20%. Like I started with like a lower and girlfriend came back with like, I'm worth half. Like I'm not going to do this for half. I'm not going to do the 49-51 thing. Like that just makes it weird. And I was like, okay. And it was after that meeting that I went to a yoga class, and it was like a restorative yoga class, and I'm in deep meditation and just sort of asked the universe, like what do I want? And it was just so clear. I want a 50% owner. I want an equal partnership. I want someone to equally share in the wins, and I want someone to equally share the burdens with me. I want a partner. And I did probably the more unconventional way of offering the equity. I wrote a whole letter. Like I'm sure she still has it. I hope she still has it. It's like a handwritten, it's like a love letter. Like proposing business partnership. And our office at the time was it was near water. It was like near the bay. And so we had like we could walk a few blocks and be at this like lookout. And so we walked to the waterfront. And I read this letter out loud to her. And proposed partnership. It was beautiful. And so that's how we became business partners. We got a lawyer. We drew up like a shareholder agreement. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of like fall in love with a business partner. This is so great. We're best friends. We're so great. I love working with you. And then they're in business and they're like, wait, what if this? And so we did all that. Like, yes, it was very unconventional. I wrote a letter to her, like we're best friends. And also we got a lawyer. We talked about what would happen if you're in a coma? What would happen if I die? Like we went through all of that. And that's how we became partners.
Well, but you do all that business stuff so that you can focus on the business afterwards. No questions about what's going to happen. So many people don't do that. I mean, I've done both, right? And it's just so important to kind of get all that crap out of the way. So, so you guys did all that stuff, and I you said something. I said, dress and behave like you have what you want to have.
Yes.
Oh man. Come on. I mean,
absolutely. And like present day being in sales and, doing sales calls for my business. I mean, I am a 7-figure entrepreneur now, but before I was like, I'm selling to 7-figure entrepreneurs. I really had to learn how to mirror that. I mean, and I had a client tell me, he's like, yeah, I know I want to work with you. And also, like, I met with some other agencies just to see. And he's like, they're all showing up in like a t-shirt, like, and I'm like, I show up, like, I'm wearing a blazer most of the time,
Yep.
a
Yep.
nice blouse. Like, if I'm going to sell a high ticket service to a 7-figure entrepreneur, you better believe I'm going to show up looking like one and behaving like one. And so
Yes.
a lot of business owners don't do that. They're like, I'm an online entrepreneur. I'll just wear a t-shirt. And it's like, I don't know, maybe that's like my one conservative
Yeah.
nature.
It's a good one. Trust me. I mean, even though everybody's in the collar and short sleeve, you have to know what fits and what works for you.
Yeah, like,
I
be
believe
authentic.
that.
I'm not saying everyone needs to wear a blazer, but I do think that things have gotten a little casual, and first impressions do go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. And you've always struck me as someone that's always business sharp. So you live what you're talking about, and it's been proven to do that. So now we'll fast forward and hear some more. So you got the 6-figure business, now it's 7-figure business, and well, I'm not sure if it's now yet, but you have a partner, and then you're going towards the 7-figure business. Partnerships the marriage is like a partnership. Marriage has good things and marriage has bad things. And what would be one thing that you could say that most people probably experience, and it's the end of their business, end of the relationship? What's something that you found that turned the corner and you guys got into a deeper relationship, or the business felt more solid after that struggle?
Well, yeah, I mean, business partnerships are a lot like a marriage because there's a contractual agreement, and we've got a real business with lots of employees. Like, it's not something that you can't just walk away from it if it's hard. Like, we're in this. There's a lot of responsibilities. There's stakes, and so we really do have a dream partnership. We balance each other out in a lot of ways. We bring different perspectives and different skill sets, and also it works so well because we did so much work to create that. To create that strength. Like, the first year of our business partnership, we did the entire Landmark curriculum for living, which is a very immersive personal development program.
Wow.
I don't know if you're familiar with Landmark, but
yes,
it's a lot. So it's like
it's big, man.
The first month, like January of 2018, the first month of our partnership, we went to the Forum, which is like Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 9 a.m. to like 11 p.m. Like, it's quite intense. And so
a lot of work.
That really created a strong foundation. It gave us a lot of communication tools. We learned a really great tip from one of our clients at the time who were business partners. They were also married, but same thing, business partners. And they said they have this really great tool that I've told other people about that they've then used. It's the strength of feeling measurement. So we're 50-50, so we can't pull I'm 1% more, so I get to decide. Like, we come to decisions together, but if we disagree on something, whoever has the higher strength of feeling, we go with their input. So we might disagree on something, but if I'm like, no, like 10 out of 10, I feel very strongly about this, she'll be like, all right, like, you clearly feel stronger about this. And then vice versa. There's some where I'm like, I don't agree, but clearly you feel very strongly about this. Like, we'll go your way. So that's a really great one. But to get back to your question, like, probably the most difficult, I mean, there's definitely been challenges, but in 2022, I made a decision to make a big change in our marketing strategy. And I wanted to stop doing the podcast guesting masterclass, the event that you've attended. We've been doing it since 2019. And previously to this moment that I'm explaining, we were operating it's a launch, we were operating this launch unsustainably. There were so many aspects that the way we operated it was really taxing, long hours. There were aspects of it that just were not super efficient. And while it was effective, like, it did bring in sales, it felt at the time like the payoff wasn't worth the cost of how much work it was. And so I think to myself, I think we could go back to another strategy. Let's go back to the conferences. Like, that's how I got Interview Connections off the ground. Let's sponsor conferences. Let's get a trade show booth. Like, let's go offline. COVID's kind of over. People are out, they're doing conferences again. And so we cancel the rest of the launches for the year and we book all these conferences. And that really tanked our sales. It did. I
can see your face just kind of go.
It did not work. And The part about this that was most challenging in regards to the business partnership was that I said to Margy, trust me, this is going to work. And it did not work. And I did not course correct soon enough. And it was like I was in such a trauma response that I just kept not wanting to see what was actually there. I didn't want to see the fact that our, revenue was going down. Our expenses were high. We're going into debt. Like there was so much that I was frozen. I was like, oh my God, like what did I do? And it felt like there was such a big ship that I was like, I don't even see a way out of this. And so it was really challenging. And it was Margy that had to come in and being like, we need to stop, like we need to go back to the master class. And so that was very challenging because I felt a lot of shame for making the wrong decision. I felt shame that I wasn't the one to fix it initially. And so I did, what followed was a lot of growth, a lot of learning how to regulate my nervous system from just being like frozen in the face of like, oh my gosh, like I had this great thing going and I kind of like broke it. Why did I do that? So we brought the launch back at the end of 2022. So it was basically 6 months where we were not doing that. And then 2023 was really a year of building back up the lead pipeline. And there were some other things like behind the scenes wise that we optimized and fixed and changed. But that was probably the biggest, I don't know if the biggest, but it was a test of our partnership to like learn to, for her to learn to forgive me in that too. So.
Well, you mentioned some powerful words in that. Thank you for sharing that too, by the way. I mean, that's really, you talked about carrying the shame and course correcting and trauma response. I mean, I was just going back through some of the, I'll just say mine, bonehead decisions that I made in business. And not that yours was. I mean, mine was clearly that way, right? And then the ego kind of was the thing too. That ego thing has kept me frozen in the past, right? Where, man, it's like, how could I have been this, or how could I let this happen? And
totally.
So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but look, the thing about it, your relationship with your business partner got stronger. You got stronger. We all need to eat the little humble pie. Matter of fact, I'm having some over the last couple of years myself, right? But you either make humble pie or you disintegrate. People, you kind of self-destruct.
Yeah. The humble pie is huge. And I think that looking back, I would not choose to go through all that again, but I'm grateful for it because I am the level of gratitude that I have now for the business and the sales and all of that is so much higher because we had really high goals. Like that's part of how we had these record-breaking years, year after year. But because we had these high goals, like every time we didn't meet the goal, I would feel like, like it wasn't good enough. But the months we were hitting because of that high goal were insane.
Right.
So good. And so now I'm so much more grateful. Like I've learned so much. I've grown so much. So it all happens for a reason, I think.
It does. And the tougher the grind, the tougher the setback, the greater the reward on the other side if we keep showing up. That's the whole thing. There's no quitting you. There's no quitting me. And it's obvious your partner is the same way. And being open, there's this chat in here. I was just going to say, we got people dropping in some thumbs up and some love things and love the transparency you're sharing. And that's what it's all about, growing in maturity and they wrote a long it's beautiful.
Great comment.
Tremendous comment there, and thank you for the comment and support here, and just that you can see it too, right? Love the transparency.
I can see it. Yeah, I can see Annalise's comment, and I think that one thing that Alex Hormozy says, I'm a fan of him. I follow his podcast and everything. Really great business advice. He says there's no winning and losing in business. Like the goal is just to stay in business. Like just stay in business. And as long as you don't give up and you keep moving forward, you keep learning from your mistakes, it'll get better, And one of the impacts of that difficult time was that I really didn't want to be visible because there were challenges behind the scenes. it felt so inauthentic to then be out on podcasts and videos and like talking about like growing your business and stuff like that, when behind the scenes I am just like, oh my god, like what the hell is going on? Like, it was tough. And so it was actually like we had to get the launch back on the calendar. We reworked it. We were doing like a 5 to 9 day launch. We're like, let's do a 3-day launch. Let's do it. So we actually made tweaks to make it a more sustainable process. And now I love it. I love the week of a launch. Like, I love the activity. I love, the connections that I form through the people that are attending. Like, it fills my cup to do it now. Whereas before, I was burnt out. And so it was getting the launch back on the calendar, getting the ads going again, and then doing podcasts again, because that's one area where I pulled back. I said no to podcast interviews. Like, people would ask me, will you come on my show? But during that time, that really difficult time, I was like, no, I can't. Like, because you can see I'm a very open book. Like, I really don't hold anything back. And when people ask me to be on their podcast, I was like, I can't do it, because I can't fake it. I can't, like, what you see is what you get. And at that time I was like, there's just no way. I can't fake this. And so I was not visible for a while. And then I started getting on podcasts again. So the beginning of this year is when I had, we had the team start booking me. So I'm doing these like 3 to 4 interviews a month now. And I started connecting people that were like, where'd you go? Like, I felt like you kind of disappeared for a while. And I was like, oh, that's so true. And that's a lesson that I've brought forward to my clients, is that, you might think that, oh, the posts on social media, the podcast appearances, like all this stuff, you feel like it's not doing anything and that people aren't responding, but you stop doing it and you go away.
Yeah.
On then.
You really are, and I love the part where you talked about, because of whatever was going on, you felt like, how can you show up and communicate all these things when really in the background it's like, oh, it's all kind of crazy, right? And I know that's true, because I'm going and gone through some of that myself, and from some of the real estate.
And I think it's important to our friend Jacqueline Nagel is a speaker, mentor, trainer. And one thing that she always says is, you don't want to do therapy from the stage. So I do think it's important. There are moments where you do need to contract. When you're in the middle of a traumatic event, whether it's personal, in your business, when you are in the middle of something, sometimes you do need to pull back. You do need to contract. You need to clean things up. But don't then stay hiding forever. Like, at some point, you've got to get back on the horse. Like, you've got to get back into the game and start playing again. And so I did contract. I was not visible for a while. I was afraid. But then it became hard to do it again. I was like, oh, I'm rusty. Like, but then once you get back into it, it's like a well-oiled machine. It's like, it's just a part of your schedule. So I think that's a really important lesson too, is like, yes, there's going to be moments where you need to contract. There's going to be times where you need to get complete with whatever you're dealing with before you're visible again, but then don't stay hiding forever. Like, you gotta move past it.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And Annalise is still there. Annalise, nice to see you too, by the way. And just your participation in this. So Jessica, we could go 3 hours. And,
as you can see, I have a lot to say.
But so many good things, and I'm taking notes and paying attention. So I always like to go back and take more notes. And I encourage everybody that's listening or hearing the replay, go back and do that, because there's a lot of life experiences, a lot of life business lessons that she's sharing with you. What I really appreciate, and being honest about the shortcomings that we all have, and getting through that. So now you're set. You guys are celebrating, the 11 years and all these things, and you're really and I will tell you too, Jessica, that, I saw you. I've been on and off on some of your stuff for at least 2 years, and I've, from where I see you now and where I've seen you before, I can see myself. It's real. I mean, you've always been real, but I mean, really, kind of like what you just said. You've come through the comeback. Right?
Oh yeah, I've come back for sure. Like, when I saw Comeback King, I'm like, okay, let's go.
And you've grown so much, and you're sharing it. So now you have this. You guys have some promotions, I think, from the celebration. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah. So we're a done-for-you podcast booking agency. So we offer a program that gets you booked on podcasts. And I'm offering to clients who got started with us in September, I will personally audit one of your interviews. So that's a bonus gift for enrolling in our Amplified Authority program in September. You'll have me personally listening to one of your interviews and giving you that feedback on how to be more effective as a podcast guest to grow your business. So that's a special bonus that I'm offering to the next 11 clients who sign up in September. So if you want to learn more about that, learn, pricing, details, all that stuff, just go to interviewconnections.com/call. And that'll bring you to a form where you can schedule a consultation call with me to see if it would be a good fit.
That would be awesome. So I encourage everybody to do that. And is it Interview Connections? I can put it in the chat.
Interviewconnections.com. I mean, if you just go to our website, there's many links to book a call. Interviewconnections.com. And of course, if you're watching this here on Facebook or social media, you can always just send me a direct message if that's easier for you.
And I would encourage everybody to do that. And Jessica, you've touched on so many different things. And as we kind of wind down and let you get back to what you got to do the rest of the day, what is it? What two things can you share? Both maybe one from family, right? Because you are a mom and raising two beautiful children, married, and then one from business that you can leave people with.
Yeah. So from the family perspective, something that my husband and I are very much in alignment on and believe is that our job as parents is to hold space for our kids' visions.
Wow.
100%. And as they're young, I mean, even into, 18, pretty much any kid, they have really big visions. They have really big dreams. And as an adult, you may think like that ain't going to happen. Like my daughter wants to be an artist and in the Olympics. I'm not going to tell her. I think that's a little far-fetched of a goal.
Right.
I mean, anything could happen. And so our job as parents is to hold space for that vision, to give them any opportunity to go for it, to not push them. Like, for example, my son wants to be a professional soccer player. Like he wants to be a professional soccer player. And so we're like, great. If you want to do that, you need to go play for the best club in this state. And
right.
You do tryouts and we'll drive you there. We'll sign you up for it if you make it. We're not going to force you to do it, but if you want to do it, we're going to make it happen for you.
Right.
So holding space for the child to do that. So that's what I believe that our job is as parents, is to mentor, guide them, and provide them with any opportunity that we can.
Yeah.
And then from a business perspective, gosh, I mean, relationships. Like I think the big theme is relationships are the building blocks of business. I sound like a fortune cookie, but it's true. I mean, 11 years in business, starting the first ever podcast booking agency, growing a team, bringing on a business partner, learning how to, co-run a business with an equal partner. Like I've been through so much, and I can tell you that it's all through genuine, authentic relationships. Like, yes, find the ways to market and get visible to the right audiences, and also focus on the relationships, because it's really solid relationships that you nurture one-to-one that allow you to have a really strong foundation, which is why I love podcast guesting, is because we're able to build a relationship right now one-on-one while having who knows how many people listen in on the conversation. So it's my favorite type of way to market, is the one-to-many while also having that one-to-one relationship.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And when you talked about your kid, hold space for your kid's vision, it made me think about something I tell people and parents all the time. Make sure your kids don't get the worst of you or what's left of you.
Yeah.
I mean, we come home and all that stuff, and then the relationships in business, and relationships are I've always believed in it. If there's someone that's doing what I'm doing in the business, they're not so much as a competitor as they are an ally. And I've always had that approach to, not always, I can't take that claim, but I think the relate, because in time of need, you may need to go to somebody that, you're competing against. And I've had and had success because of the relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's not always been, it used to be about meet as many people as you could and all blah, 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 blah. but it's not that way for me either. So,
Yeah.
well, listen, this has
Geoff,
been
I could talk to you for hours. You're a great facilitator. Great
Thank you.
interviewer.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And you come just like I knew you would. You've come and just overperformed, over-delivered. So many things that I encourage people to go back and listen to and reach out to her and take advantage of the things that she's talking about in terms of the birthday business celebration. Because, if you can get close to her, I would encourage you to do that. So, Jessica,
thank you.
Any parting words before I turn this thing off?
Take action, be an implementer. That's one of my biggest lessons, is to implement at the speed of instruction. That's a quote from one of my clients, Jay Massey. Implement at the speed of instruction, and book a call with me, interviewconnections.com. If you want to get booked on podcasts, look no further than Interview Connections, because we're the best in the biz.
And they are, by the way, and I'll just say that because I talk to a lot of people and see a lot of things. So, and what you see is what you get. Yeah. Right. And so I want to still, what's that quote again? Implement at
the speed of instruction. Implement at the speed of instruction. Jermaine Massey, he's amazing. Cashflowdiary.com.
I'm familiar with Jay.
Oh, great. Yeah. He took a shot on me early on. He was one of my early clients, had me on his show in the early days. So I love Jay.
Yeah. He's a brilliant guy. So, hi. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Geoff. I appreciate it. Thanks to everyone who watched.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. And make sure you take her up on reaching out to her. Jessica, we'll see you again. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Whew. Hey, listen, like I told you guys, I would encourage you to go back, share this session with everybody that you know, because everybody has a message that needs to be heard, and getting out in front of it and saving yourself a lot of time. Invest in yourself, invest for speed, take advantage of the experts that are in this business to help you get your message out. Thank you so much again. I want to thank our guests for showing up here today, and Conversations with Geoff is all about what you just saw. So before I say goodbye, I want you to remember, watch that stinking thinking. And when you're looking in the mirror, you guys already know, look past that person that's stuck in their current circumstances that really doesn't feel like they can have what it takes. And remember that you are meant for more. Nothing will stop you from reaching your destiny. You will not be denied. I'm telling you that. I want you to own that and know that we're all meant to do great things in this place. So thank you so much for participating. Great show today. Hey, and we'll see you on the next episode. I want to thank my friend again. What a great time. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.